just to explain sort of what's going on, you all have a program, so this is what we wanted to try to do. Part of our research with the Marleys has been taking this back into the 19th century with the whole American clog dance phenomenon, and of course I know that there'll be this many people here for the lecture, which will be right after the show and tell up in the 6-1 common room, and we can tell you more details on that. But we wanted to try and run this whole thing like a show without the sort of usual stopping and explaining what things are, to try and create some sense of how the clog dancing was in fact used on the minstrel show and variety shows in the 19th century. So we'll be banging along and just consult your programs, and if you have any questions, come get us later. So, where are we? Are we all set? You guys got... Right. Great food, no atmosphere. And up next, an old favorite, a great favorite of ours since he's been in the United States, accompanied by Mr. Paul Earwicker. Would you please welcome at least one and maybe two people? Just one. It's the great, the one, the only. Mr. Woodcock. Yes, sir, Mr. Bone.
Mr. Denver, maybe you can tell me what is the difference between a melodeon and a trampoline?
I don't know, Mr. Bones. What is the difference?
You take your shoes to jump on a trampoline.
or what do you call a guy that hangs out with musicians?
I don't know. What do you call it?
A melodeon player.
Mr. E. Dunmur, accompanied by Ben Thackeray. You'll know the chorus. There is a flower within my heart, Daisy, Daisy, planted one day by a glancing dart, planted by Daisy Bell. Whether she loves me or loves me not, oh, sometimes it's hard to tell. But I am willing to share the lot of beautiful Daisy Bell. Together, Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer due. I'm half crazy, all for the love of you. It won't be a stylish marriage, I can't afford a carriage, but you look sweet upon the seat of a bicycle made for two. I will stick by you in weal or woe, Daisy, Daisy, you'll be the bell that I ring, you know, beautiful Daisy Bell. Now when things are dark we can both despise policemen and lamps as well, but there are bright lights in the dazzling eyes of beautiful Daisy Bell. Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer due. I'm half crazy, all for the love of you. It won't be a stylish marriage, I can't afford a carriage, but you look sweet upon the seat of a bicycle made for two. We will go tandem as man and wife, Daisy, Daisy, pedaling along down the road of life, I and my Daisy Bell. Now you'll take the lead in each trip we take, and then if I don't do well, I will permit you to use the brake, my beautiful Daisy Bell. Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer due. I'm half crazy, all for the love of you. It won't be a stylish marriage, I can't afford a carriage, but you look sweet upon the seat of a bicycle.
feminist sentiments in that last song. Tell me, how many feminists does it take to screw in a light bulb?
I don't know. How many
That's not funny.
See, feminism hasn't made it to here, Mr. Bill. How many Jewish mothers does it take to screw in a light bulb?
I don't know, Mr. Campbell.
It's okay, I'll sit in the dark. The only two people who survived flying across the Atlantic with 35 pounds doubled up of pieces of Vermont marble in the overhead bin. Some of us made sure we didn't sit underneath it. The two people who were wise enough to sit on the other side of the plane will dance the Marley Clog.
Some just amazing clog dancers here. Tell me, Mr. Campbell, how do you know that a clog dancer is dancing on a level floor?
I think the drool comes down both sides of his mouth.
That's right.
Yeah. Accompanied by Mr. Alan Pitwood, a change from your programs. Please welcome to do Sam Sherry's jig here, along with the rest of us in the presence of the great Shan Sherry. Please welcome Mr. Harry Cowgill. Mr. Bones,
Yes, Mr. Campbell.
do you know what you get if you throw a grenade onto the kitchen floor?
No, what
This is a French joke. Linoleum blown apart.
Tell me, Mr. Campbell,
Yes, sir, Mr. Bones.
how many clog dancers does it take to eat, what would be over here, eat a badger?
To eat a badger?
Yes,
I don't know the answer to that, Mr. Bones.
it takes two. One to eat it, and one to watch for cars.
Lynette Eldon, accompanied by Keith Holloway dancing the Northumberland and Durham Championship Club. Was it this year? A long while ago, but it's still a championship club. of a living experiment. Yes. And this staircase dance is a piece that Anna essentially choreographed for us. She used to do a staircase dance for her students that she taught during 40 years after World War II, but they were always separate pedestals and staircases, and she made this up to go on here under the speed by Paul Eric Smith there. And he's going to give it a whirl to play for us, the Tambourine Overture and staircase. Wait. Here we go. Ready to go.
Now let's actually start.
Mr. Bones.
Great pitch. You know, what is the definition of perfect pitch?
You know, I've thought about that for a long time. I don't know the answer.
Well, actually, that's the ability to toss a melodeon into the toilet without hitting the rim.
Competition. Please welcome, accompanied by her dad, Tony Hill. Please welcome Jennifer Hill. Ladies and gentlemen, you'll see what this is. Before we teach that next year, everybody should spend the next year actually practicing just jump roping. Accompanied by John Dixon, the inimitable Pat Tracey and Camden Cloggies. Thank you for being such a wonderful audience here. It's been very exciting for us to share our dances, learn from Anna Marley with all these fabulous clog dances here. And since there are only 7 of us, plus Eric, we've asked Mr. Chris Brady down on the end there to fill in as our 8th member.
Very much, Andy Johnson, one of the all performers.